The Gospel of Jesus Christ according to Mark. That day when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There was also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat, so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him."
This is the Gospel of the Lord. Today we are reading from the Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to Mark, one of the miracles of our Lord. And before we go to the miracle, I would like us to just pay attention to the little details that we encounter in the introduction that we read today. Jesus is with his disciples and he tells them, "Let's go to the other side." And the gospel writer tells us that he went just as he was. He went into the boat, and there were other boats with him or around him. So these are details, but let me ask you, what does this add to the story? What does this add to the narrative? It doesn't add anything. Jesus went the way he was. In other words, he didn't change. There were other boats. He went into the boat with his disciples. Small details that don't add anything to the essence of the story. But this is a very important clue that tells us that this is an eyewitness account. Because only an eyewitness will call details that don't matter. Because the writer obviously was there. And this was something that was imprinted in their memory. So I would like us to go and explore this very powerful miracle today and see what are the implications of this miracle in our lives. The disciples of Jesus encounter a very powerful storm in the Lake of Galilee. This was a place that was well known for the storms, and the storms happened suddenly without any warning. The disciples of Jesus were fishermen. They were very well aware of this situation. And my sense is that they were also trained how to deal with situations like this. But when this storm happens, in the details of the narrative, we see that they were so scared that they thought that they would die. So this is an indication that this was not a regular storm. This was not something that the disciples were accustomed to. This was really something very powerful, very strong. So for this reason, they go and they wake up Jesus. And just like the storm was powerful, the gospel tells us that the word of Jesus is so powerful. Because he gets up and he tells the storm, "Be quiet," and stay quiet. Jesus doesn't work himself up to face this big storm. In other words, to use maybe slang, he tells the storm, "Shut up," and stay shut up. And the storm obeys him. It's very interesting when disciples faced the storm, they were really scared. And when Jesus gets up and he quiets the storm, they are scared again. This is a really interesting transition. Initially, they were afraid for their lives. But after the storm was quiet, after Jesus stopped the winds and stopped the waves, they experienced a sign of awe. And this is something that we need to think about it for a minute. But this was not about the storm. This was not about the nature. This was about the disciples, and this is about us. The way that the disciples wake him up is very interesting. They go and wake him up, who was having a nap on a cushion in the back end of the boat. and they tell him, "Don't you care that we all are dying?" This is a very interesting question. Don't you care that we are dying? The disciples obviously had this idea that now we are the followers of the Son of God. Now that we have Jesus, we should be immune from all kinds of troubles and tribulations in life because we have Jesus. Don't you care that this is happening to us? Just try to listen and find the sense of entitlement that the disciples have. Don't you care? And when we listen carefully to what the disciples say, it's not much different than what we say and what we do in our lives. God, don't you care that this is happening to me? If you are really up there, how could you allow this to happen to me, God? This is the sense of entitlement that we have, and this is how we approach God. If you are really a good God, why you let this happen to us, God? You didn't give me what I wanted. You didn't give me the protection that I needed. Therefore, God, you don't exist. I'm going to deny you. This is how we operate. And the more I think about this, the one example that comes to my mind is the example of a good father, of good parents who give everything to their children, day in and day out. Those of us who are parents, we know how this works. We stay awake, we give, and we provide for our children. And then one day, a new movie is released, and your child comes to you, and your child is telling you that all of my friends are going to see this movie, and I want to go. You have to take me to see this movie. And you're having a bad Friday. Mentally, you're not ready to see any movies. You just want to take some time for yourself, and you just want to relax, and you tell them, we're not doing that today. We're not going to see a movie. And your children come to you and they're like, you don't love me. Because if you loved me, you would have taken me to that movie. Sometimes we experience this. Everything that you have done is not remembered. And this one thing that doesn't happen the way that they want, you're blamed for, and the love that you have is kind of negated. Sometimes this is how we approach God, and this is very sad. They asked, you don't care? And Jesus answers them by posing a question. Why are you so afraid? Do you still not have faith? In the Gospel of Luke, the same narrative is given to us slightly different. In the Gospel of Luke, Jesus asks, where is your faith? Jesus answers the question with another question. Where is your faith? Today I'd like us to think about this question. Where is our faith? In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus speaks the following words. He compares two people. He says there are two kinds of people. One who builds his house on the sand. And when the storms come, that house doesn't stand. The rain, the flood, the wind destroy the house because that house is built on the sand. But Jesus says the one who builds his house on the rock, the storms will come, but that house will not crumble. The winds, the floods, and the rain will not do anything to that house. So, when Jesus is asking us today, where is your faith? We need to ask ourselves, on what we have built our faith. Is it built on sand, or is it built on the rock? If we have built our faith on what we do, on the business that we have, then when your business doesn't work, when your business goes down, you also go down. If you have built your faith on people around you, on your spouse, on your partner, on your family members, on your friends, when that relationship doesn't work, when the people around you are no longer with you, you also go down. Today's question is a very important one. Where is your faith? But if it's built on Jesus Christ, no matter what happens, God will always be with you. Remember, God is not promising to give us a problem-free life. That is not part of our belief. Jesus is saying, the storms will come, and you better be prepared for the storms. But when the storms come, I am with you. Jesus is with us. And with that faith, we can face all kinds of storms, and we can also grow. Սիրելի քույրեր եւ եղբայրներ, այսօրվան մեր ավետարանի ընթերցումը մեզ կսորվեցնե բոլոր դժվարություններու ընթացքին մեր աչքերը հարած բահել Հիսուս Քրիստոսի, ան որ մեր ժայրն է, ան ժայրը որ բնավ չի խորդագիր։ Այսօր հրավեր ունենք երթալու Քրիստոսի եւ մեր բոլոր դժվարությունները իրեն հանձնելու, հավատալով որ անիկա է պատասխանը մեր բոլոր դժվարություններուն, ինքն է հույսը մեր բոլոր դժվարություններուն։
If you liked Father Noddick's teaching, we invite you to worship with us every Sunday at St. Sarkis Armenian Apostolic Church in Douglaston, New York.